After 15 years, the new CEO said I had to go. Just getting rid of dead weight. Monday was going to be my last day at the company that had been my second home for over a decade and a half. The words still echoed in my mind like an unrelenting storm, battering against the fragile walls of my dignity. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Her voice carried no trace of empathy, only cold indifference, as though dismissing me were akin to swatting away a fly buzzing around her desk. She sat there behind that gleaming mahogany monstrosity, her tailored suit immaculate, her posture rigid with authority, while I stood frozen on the other side, clutching the box containing 15 years' worth of memories, photographs, coffee mugs gifted by colleagues, and awards earned through sleepless nights and relentless dedication. I had walked into this building when I was barely 22, fresh out of college, wide-eyed, eager, and hungry to prove myself. Back then, the company was smaller, scrappier, filled with people who felt more like family than co-workers. We laughed together during late-night brainstorming sessions, celebrated victories big and small, mourned losses both professional and personal. And now, here I was, being told that everything I'd poured into this place meant nothing. That all those years amounted to dead weight. As I left her office, my legs felt heavy, each step dragging me further away from the life I thought I knew. The hallway seemed endless, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows over my face. Coworkers glanced up briefly from their desks before returning to their screens, pretending not to notice the defeated slump of my shoulders or the cardboard box cradled awkwardly in my arms. Some offered sympathetic smiles, others avoided eye contact altogether, unwilling to acknowledge the uncomfortable truth that tomorrow, they might be next. When I reached my car, parked in the same spot I'd occupied for years, I set the box down on the passenger seat and stared blankly at the steering wheel. How could this happen? After everything I'd done, the sacrifices, the loyalty, I couldn't believe it was ending like this. A bitter lump formed in my throat as anger began to simmer beneath the surface. Who did she think she was, waltzing in after less than 6 months and deciding who mattered and who didn't? What gave her the right to strip away decades of hard work with such callous disregard? But even as fury bubbled inside me, another emotion crept in, shame. Was I really expendable? Had I become complacent without realizing it? These questions gnawed at me as I drove home, the cityscape blurring past my window like fragments of a dream slipping through my fingers. By the time I pulled into my driveway, exhaustion had settled deep within my bones, heavier than any physical weight. Stepping inside my house did little to ease the turmoil swirling in my chest. The silence greeted me like an old friend turned stranger, hollow and unwelcoming. Every room held echoes of the career I was losing, the framed certificates hanging proudly on the walls, the leather briefcase resting by the door, the planner lying open on the kitchen counter, its pages meticulously organized yet suddenly meaningless. I sank onto the couch, head in my hands, trying desperately to make sense of it all. Sleep eluded me that night. Hours ticked by as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction I'd ever had with the new CEO. Her name was Evelyn Harper, a rising star in the corporate world known for turning struggling companies into profit machines. When she first arrived, there had been whispers of admiration among the staff. She exuded confidence, intelligence, and ambition, qualities we admired but also feared. Within weeks, she implemented sweeping changes, restructuring teams, cutting budgets, demanding higher performance metrics. At first, I'd convinced myself that these measures were necessary, even beneficial. But now, sitting alone in the dark, I wondered if they were merely tools to assert dominance, to reshape the company in her image regardless of the cost. By morning, fatigue clung to me like a second skin, but I forced myself out of bed anyway. There were things to do, loose ends to tie up. As much as I wanted to wallow in self-pity, I refused to give Evelyn, or anyone else, the satisfaction of seeing me broken. So I showered, dressed in one of my best suits, and headed back to the office for what would undoubtedly be the most surreal day of my life. Walking through the doors felt surreal. People avoided looking directly at me, their discomfort palpable. The air buzzed with whispered conversations that ceased abruptly whenever I passed. In the break room, someone accidentally spilled coffee on themselves upon seeing me enter, fumbling apologies as they hurriedly cleaned up. Even Greg, my closest friend at work, hesitated before approaching me, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by awkwardness. "Hey," he said softly, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "You okay?" I nodded, though neither of us believed it. "Yeah, I'll be fine." Greg sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "This is bullshit, man. You've done more for this company than anyone else. She doesn't know what she's talking about." His words should have comforted me, but instead, they ignited a spark of defiance. If Evelyn thought she could erase my legacy so easily, she was wrong. I may have been leaving, but I wouldn't go quietly. Determined to leave on my own terms, I spent the day tying up loose ends, ensuring that my projects were handed off smoothly and that my team had everything they needed to succeed without me. Despite the circumstances, I found solace in knowing that I hadn't failed them. My contributions weren't perfect, but they were meaningful, and they would endure long after I was gone. As the clock neared 5 o'clock, signaling the end of my final shift, I gathered my belongings and prepared to say goodbye. One by one, colleagues stopped by my desk to offer heartfelt farewells, some fighting back tears, others gripping my hand tightly as if afraid to let go. Their kindness caught me off guard, filling me with gratitude despite the ache in my heart. Then, just as I was about to leave, something unexpected happened. Evelyn appeared at the edge of the cubicle farm, her presence commanding attention. For a moment, I thought she'd come to gloat, to reinforce her earlier dismissal. Instead, she approached me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Was it regret? Uncertainty? Whatever it was, it made my pulse quicken. "I need to speak with you," she said simply, gesturing toward her office. Confused but curious, I followed her, clutching the box tighter as we entered the same room where she delivered her devastating verdict less than 24 hours ago. This time, however, something felt different. The atmosphere was charged with tension, yet there was a vulnerability in Evelyn's demeanor that hadn't been there before. She closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit. Hesitantly, I complied, perching on the edge of the chair as she took her seat across from me. For several moments, neither of us spoke, the silence stretching between us like a taut wire. Finally, Evelyn broke it. "I owe you an explanation," she began, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "What I said yesterday, it wasn't fair. Not to you, and not to the company." Her admission caught me off guard, rendering me speechless. Where was this coming from? What game was she playing now? Evelyn leaned forward slightly, her gaze steady but tinged with remorse. "When I took this position, I was under immense pressure to deliver results quickly. The board expected immediate improvements, and I let that cloud my judgment. I started making decisions based on numbers rather than people, cutting corners, eliminating roles without fully understanding their value. Including yours." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I studied her face, searching for signs of insincerity, but found none. Whatever this was, it seemed genuine. "But why are you telling me this now?" I asked cautiously, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why does it matter?" Evelyn sighed, rubbing her temples as though carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Because last night, after you left, I received a call from Richard, the founder of this company. He retired years ago, but apparently, word of your departure reached him. He wanted to know why someone who'd given so much to this organization was being let go. When I tried to justify my decision, he challenged me. Asked me to explain exactly what dead weight you represented. And the truth is," she paused, swallowing hard. "The truth is, I couldn't." Her confession hit me like a freight train, knocking the wind out of me. All the anger, frustration, and humiliation I'd felt over the past day surged back, mingling with a newfound sense of vindication. Yet, strangely, I didn't feel triumphant. Instead, I felt conflicted. Evelyn continued, her tone growing increasingly earnest. "So, I dug deeper. I reviewed your records, talked to your team, looked at the impact you've had on this company, not just financially, but culturally. And what I found, it humbled me. You've been the backbone of this organization for 15 years. Your leadership, your dedication, your ability to inspire others, it's unparalleled. Losing you isn't just a loss for the company, it's a loss for everyone who's ever worked alongside you." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away, unwilling to let her see how deeply her words affected me. "If you realized all this, why didn't you stop it sooner?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to remain composed. Evelyn lowered her gaze, shame etched into every line of her face. "Because I was too proud. Too focused on proving myself as a leader to admit I'd made a mistake. But today, as I watched the way your colleagues reacted to your departure, their sadness, their anger, their disbelief, I realized I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't let you walk away thinking you didn't matter. Because you do. More than I can put into words. For the first time since entering her office, I allowed myself to breathe. The weight pressing down on my chest began to lift, replaced by a cautious hope I hadn't dared to entertain. Still, I couldn't shake the lingering doubt. Was this some elaborate ploy to salvage her reputation? Or was she truly sincere? Before I could respond, Evelyn reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table toward me. "This is your severance package," she explained. "It includes 6 months' pay, extended health benefits, and a letter of recommendation personally signed by me. But more importantly," she hesitated, choosing her words carefully, "if you're willing, I'd like to offer you a consulting role. Temporary, of course, but with the potential to evolve into something more permanent. Your insights are invaluable, and I want, you deserve, to be part of shaping the future of this company." The proposal stunned me. Consulting? After everything that had transpired, she wanted me to stay involved? Part of me wanted to reject her outright, to walk away and never look back. But another part, a quieter, more rational part, recognized the opportunity for what it was, a chance to reclaim some semblance of control, to rewrite the narrative she tried to impose on me. Yet, even as I considered her offer, I couldn't ignore the larger implications. Accepting it meant forgiving her, trusting her, and placing myself back under her authority. Could I do that? Did I even want to? Evelyn must have sensed my hesitation because she added, almost pleadingly, "I know I don't deserve your trust right now. But if you'll give me a chance, I promise to earn it. Starting today." Her sincerity was undeniable, her vulnerability disarmingly human. For the first time since meeting her, I saw not just the formidable CEO but the flawed individual beneath the polished exterior. And perhaps, just perhaps, that glimpse of humanity was enough to consider giving her, and myself, a second chance. But as I sat there, weighing my options, I realized this wasn't just about me or Evelyn. It was about the countless others who relied on me, who looked to me for guidance and support. Leaving would mean abandoning them, severing ties that had taken years to build. Staying, on the other hand, presented its own challenges, but also opportunities to make a difference, to ensure that the values I held dear remained intact. In that moment, I understood that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or excusing what had been done. It was about choosing to move forward, to rise above bitterness and resentment, and to create something meaningful out of pain. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth exploring. With a deep breath, I opened the folder and began reading the details of her proposal, my mind racing with possibilities. Whatever decision I made, one thing was certain: this wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter, one that promised uncertainty, growth, and perhaps even redemption. The folder lay open on my lap, its contents both daunting and intriguing. Evelyn sat across from me, her posture rigid but her eyes soft, betraying a mix of anticipation and vulnerability. The consulting role she proposed wasn't just a token gesture, it came with significant responsibilities, including advising senior leadership on strategic decisions, mentoring emerging talent within the company, and helping to rebuild the fractured culture that had eroded under her initial wave of changes. But as I read through the terms, one line caught my attention: flexible schedule, remote work options, and autonomy in determining project scope. It was an olive branch extended carefully, acknowledging not only my value but also the toll her earlier dismissal must have taken. For someone who had spent 15 years tethered to this building, clocking endless hours and sacrificing personal time for professional success, the idea of flexibility felt foreign and tempting. Still, trust doesn't come easily when it's been broken. I looked up at Evelyn, meeting her gaze directly. "You're asking me to stay," I said slowly, choosing each word with care. "To help fix what you started tearing apart. Why should I believe this isn't just another way to save face?" Her jaw tightened slightly, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply before responding. "Because I need you," she admitted, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "Not because I want to salvage my reputation, though I won't lie, that matters, but because this company needs you. The people here need you. And frankly," she paused, her expression softening further, "so do I." For a moment, silence hung between us, thick and heavy. Her admission carried a raw honesty that disarmed me. This wasn't the same woman who had coldly labeled me as dead weight less than 24 hours ago. Something had shifted, not just in her demeanor, but in the dynamic between us. Whether it was genuine remorse or desperation, I couldn't yet tell. But there was no denying the sincerity in her tone. "I'll think about it," I replied finally, closing the folder and standing. My legs still felt unsteady beneath me, weighed down by conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to storm out, to reject her offer outright and leave her to deal with the consequences of her actions. Another part, a quieter, more pragmatic voice, urged caution. If I walked away now, I'd be surrendering not just my position but any chance to influence the direction of a company I'd poured my soul into. Evelyn nodded, rising to meet me. "Take all the time you need," she said. "But know this, whatever decision you make, I respect it. And if you choose to walk away, I won't stop you. You've earned that right." Her words resonated deeply, though I couldn't fully articulate why. Perhaps it was the acknowledgement of my agency, the recognition that I held power in this situation despite everything that had transpired. Or maybe it was simply the fact that she hadn't tried to manipulate or coerce me into staying. Whatever the reason, I found myself nodding curtly before turning to leave. As I stepped out of her office, the weight of the day pressed heavily on my shoulders. The hallway seemed quieter now, most employees having left for the evening. Only a few stragglers remained, their heads bent over laptops or phones, oblivious to the turmoil swirling inside me. I moved past them without making eye contact, clutching the folder tightly as I made my way toward the elevator. When I reached the parking lot, the cool night air hit me like a slap, jolting me back to reality. My car sat where I'd left it hours earlier, illuminated faintly by the dim glow of overhead lights. I slid into the driver's seat, resting my forehead against the steering wheel as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me. What had begun as a day of devastation had transformed into something far more complex, a labyrinth of choices, doubts, and possibilities. The drive home passed in a blur, the cityscape outside my window dissolving into streaks of light and shadow. When I arrived, the house greeted me with the same oppressive silence as before. Dropping the folder onto the kitchen counter, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sank onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. The amber liquid burned as it slid down my throat, offering little comfort but providing a temporary distraction from the chaos in my mind. Hours later, sleep eluded me once again. Every time I closed my eyes, images of Evelyn's face flashed before me, her steely resolve during our first encounter, her guarded vulnerability in her office, and finally, the almost pleading look in her eyes as she asked me to reconsider. Try as I might, I couldn't reconcile these disparate versions of her. Was she truly capable of change, or was this all part of some calculated strategy? By morning, fatigue had settled into my bones, but clarity began to emerge. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, I opened the folder again and studied the proposal in detail. The financial compensation was generous, the benefits comprehensive, and the potential for impact undeniable. Yet, none of these factors could outweigh the fundamental question gnawing at me: could I forgive Evelyn enough to work alongside her again? It wasn't just about her, though. Accepting the role would mean reconciling with the very institution that had discarded me so callously. It would require swallowing my pride, setting aside resentment, and embracing uncertainty. On the other hand, rejecting the offer meant walking away entirely, from the company, from my colleagues, and from the sense of purpose I'd built over 15 years. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden light through the windows, I realized I needed perspective. Grabbing my keys, I decided to take a walk, a rare indulgence in recent years. The neighborhood was quiet, its streets lined with trees shedding their autumn leaves. Each step brought a measure of calm, allowing me to process the whirlwind of emotions that had consumed me since Monday. Eventually, I found myself at a small park near the edge of town. A bench overlooking a pond beckoned, and I sat down, watching ducks paddle lazily across the water. It was here, surrounded by nature's simplicity, that a memory surfaced, one I hadn't thought of in years. Early in my career, shortly after joining the company, I'd faced a similar crossroads. Back then, I'd been passed over for a promotion I believed I deserved, replaced instead by a colleague with less experience but better political savvy. The rejection stung, fueling anger and self-doubt. For weeks, I debated whether to confront my boss or quietly accept the outcome. In the end, I chose neither. Instead, I threw myself into my work, determined to prove my worth not through confrontation but through action. That decision changed everything. Within months, my contributions earned recognition not just from my superiors but from peers and subordinates alike. By focusing on what I could control rather than dwelling on perceived injustices, I'd turned a setback into an opportunity for growth. Looking back, it was one of the defining moments of my career, a lesson in resilience and adaptability. Now, sitting by the pond, I recognized echoes of that experience in my current predicament. Once again, I stood at a crossroads, faced with a choice that would shape not just my future but my identity. Would I let bitterness dictate my path, or would I rise above it, channeling my energy towards something greater? The answer didn't come immediately. It lingered in the crisp autumn air, carried by the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant chatter of children playing nearby. But as I rose from the bench and began the walk home, a sense of resolve began to take root. Whatever decision I made, it wouldn't be driven by fear, anger, or ego. It would be guided by purpose, the same purpose that had propelled me through 15 years of challenges, triumphs, and sacrifices. When I returned home, I picked up the folder once more, flipping through its pages with renewed focus. There were risks involved, certainly, but also opportunities, to mend fences, to inspire others, and perhaps even to challenge Evelyn to become the leader she claimed she wanted to be. As daunting as it seemed, the prospect of shaping the company's future, even from the sidelines, was undeniably appealing. Reaching for my phone, I hesitated briefly before dialing a number I knew by heart. Greg answered on the second ring, his voice tinged with concern. "Hey man, how are you holding up?" I smiled faintly, leaning back in my chair. "Better than expected," I replied. "Listen, I need your advice." For the next hour, we talked, not just about the offer but about the broader implications of accepting or declining it. Greg listened intently, offering insights born from years of friendship and shared experiences. By the time we hung up, I felt clearer than I had in days. Not because he'd provided definitive answers, he hadn't, but because articulating my thoughts aloud helped solidify my own convictions. That evening, as twilight descended and shadows lengthened across the room, I drafted a response to Evelyn. It wasn't an acceptance or a rejection, not yet, but rather a request for additional details and clarification. Specifically, I wanted to understand how much autonomy I'd truly have, what metrics would define success, and what safeguards existed to prevent history from repeating itself. Sending the email felt like taking the first step on a long journey. I didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time since Monday, I felt a flicker of hope, a fragile tentative flame that refused to be extinguished. Over the next few days, Evelyn responded promptly to my queries, her emails marked by a level of transparency and humility I hadn't anticipated. She agreed to include specific clauses in the contract ensuring my independence, promised regular check-ins to address concerns, and even suggested involving Richard, the company founder, in key decision-making processes. Each interaction chipped away at my skepticism, replacing it with cautious optimism. Meanwhile, word of my potential return spread quickly among colleagues. Messages of encouragement flooded my inbox, along with offers of support and collaboration. Some expressed relief, while others voiced cautious excitement about the possibility of working together again. Their enthusiasm buoyed me, reminding me of the connections I'd forged over the years and the impact I'd had on those around me. By Friday, I felt ready to make a decision. Sitting at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee, I reviewed the revised proposal one final time. It wasn't perfect, no agreement ever is, but it represented a compromise rooted in mutual respect and shared goals. Taking a deep breath, I signed the document electronically and sent it back to Evelyn with a brief note, "Let's get to work." Her reply arrived within minutes. "Thank you," she wrote simply. "You won't regret this." Whether those words proved prophetic remained to be seen. But as I stared at the screen, a strange sense of peace washed over me. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, fraught with obstacles and uncertainties. Yet, for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of excitement, a spark of curiosity about what might lie beyond the horizon. And perhaps that was enough.